I'm H. Patrick Swigert, the president of Howard University. On this occasion, the university takes great pride in recognizing the contributions made by our own WHMM-TV, Channel 32. For the past 15 years, WHMM has been committed to providing quality programming for the Washington area community. Its efforts have been rewarded with 12 prestigious Emmy Awards. Along the way, many Howard students have been trained in television techniques, and our faculty and staff have enjoyed a variety of on-site production services. On behalf of the entire Howard University family, I congratulate WHMM for 15 years of broadcast excellence and community service. Keep up the good work.
If I am true to the mission of African liberation and trying to use African liberation to bring into being a new humanity for the world, starting with the African people, I know I must offend. I know I have no choice. If I wasn't controversial, I would not consider myself norm. I try to consider myself honest. And I try to be honest to the point where I can always live with myself. And I always look back and re-evaluate my evaluation to the point of correcting myself if I am wrong. I had a great-grandmother, who I still think is a saint, or even God in disguise. I loved her that much. And when I couldn't find the image of my own people in the literature of the Bible, I suspected that someone had tampered with God's book. And she told me God was love, and God was merciful, God was kind, God was no respecter of kith and kin. Then when I asked for a book from someone I was working for on the role of African people in ancient history, the person told me I came from people that have no history. And I began to search. When I came to New York in the 30s, 1933, in the heart of the Depression, and radicalism was norm. It didn't get investigated because you were hungry and deprived and living on a minimum level. You were expected to be radical. And most of us were. You were expected to protest. You were expected to get out in the street and hold up things. And I don't mean banks, but you expected to get on streetcars and dare the, without paying, and dare the conductor to put you off. And you expected to block people's way going into stores where you couldn't get a job. And we did all those things. And we had a very healthy attitude toward doing them. And the so-called Buy Black campaign that started in Chicago has spread to New York, and we were fighting for jobs in our own communities. Multiplicity of political wings fighting for our attention, communists, socialists, and Trotskyites, and radical groups of all kinds, and different branches of religions, also fighting for our attention. And but we thought we were trying to make a new world, and come 1935, 1936, in the Italian-Ethiopian War, we refocused a lot of our attention on Africa again, and to some extent gave a rebirth, a revitalization to the concept of back to Africa. Situations like Rodney King in Los Angeles keep up, we're going to realize we ain't got nobody to turn to but each other. And that we were not brought to America to be given democracy or citizenship. And that's America's dilemma and our dilemma also. Let's deal with the images of today, and let's deal with the John Wayne image, the image of the Caucasian always being the hero, and the image of the black always being the loser. Let's deal with the I Spy image, that old series that Bill Cosby appeared in years ago. The white protagonist nearly always got the girl, and on occasion when Bill Cosby encountered a black girl, he couldn't even win her over. And this white guy was just knocking over blondes, brunettes, and everybody else all over the place, you know. So you got the image of somebody else as the great lover and the great something another. The image of the black man as being inadequate, not only inadequate lover, but even inadequate even in talking to a woman. And we know full well this is not true. This is the best information age ever known to man. And there is no excuse for so many people being so terribly misinformed. There's no excuse for people having debates, even almost fistfights over something you can verify by opening the page of a book. What we fail to take into consideration is that when Europe needed a rationale for slavery, they not only colonized most of the world, they colonized information about the world, they colonized image. The most disastrous of all the images for us, they colonized the image of God. People, as a rule, looks at God as a figure that resembles themselves. This is universally true until it comes to us. When we gave up our original concept of God, we were in trouble. We're not talking about God, we're talking about concept now. We're not talking about whether we're Christian or not. We're talking about if we are Christian, we should have a concept of Christianity that's distinctly ours. We did not look at other ethnic groups, principally Jewish. Jewish people hadn't dismantled a single institution, and they're integrated. Irish haven't dismantled a single institution, and they're integrated. We could have sharpened our institution other than to dismantle them, pull away from them. The minute the white schools or colleges were open to us, we began to neglect the predominantly black schools, which was the worst thing we could have done. We could have strengthened them. And we still think that every student who wants to go to one of the predominantly white schools, and if they have courses that you need, and you should be able to go there. But we still think that the predominantly black school should remain as the institution where you are more readily accepted, and the schools that has graduated the largest number of blacks, and the schools that still graduate the largest number of blacks, the schools where they do not en masse drop out And many of the white schools put certain pressure on them that many of them don't finish the second year. Most of them who go to the predominantly black schools generally finish. We must deal with a school system where so many children go into school and they are programmed into a depressive attitude about themselves because they're told through emphasis and through direct image that they're not a part of the total society. And when they leave the school, many times they go out to try to establish a kind of human beingness and seeking a kind of ego massage that they could not find in the school. And therefore the gangs and the speech, and part of it is in the rap, and all of this is a search for a form of identity that the society has denied them. I do not think that rap needs to be vulgar. I do not think that rap needs to be a series of silly grunts. I think if the rappers did a little more reading and thinking, so many things on their records that are factually wrong could be made right. And they could make positive statements and still sell records and make money. And one of the main reasons they have not made positive statements in most cases is that they don't know. I think there's a rapper called Sister Soldier, Lisa Williamson was the original name, and a rap record called At War. I think this is the first rap record that I know of made a very positively profound statement and that dealt to a great degree with prophecy based on previous historical experience. And this is a step forward. If we included the history of African peoples into a history that is basically incorrect, that's like pouring clean water into a dirty glass. I think there needs to be a corrected general history of the United States, and our history, our corrected history, need to be part of that correction. And I think that we need a curricula of correction, liberation of curricula of truth. When we talk about inclusion, we should be included into something that at least partly purified. I think people should stop looking for individual leaders. Charismatic leader might be a thing of the past. Let's look for a charismatic program. And if the leader dies and you're on page 13, turn to page 14. Bury the man, continue the plan. I think we have more leaders and less leadership than any people in this country, or in the world for that matter. I can remember a time, I'm just that old, when you could get a fight for saying a bad word in front of a man's sister, or walking past a man's grandmother without saying, "Excuse me." We had some manners that we brought over, some courtesies we used to maintain among ourselves. They kept us together and kept us respectful one to the other that we seem to have discarded. It used to be unthinkable for a girl to even marry or even consider marrying any man unless she show him off in her community. And want to know what everybody in the community think about him. If they didn't think well of him, she's going to think twice as well she want to marry him. This kind of seeking community census and consent is no longer there. We're in an individual move as against a collective approach to things. We need to get the collective back again and come closer together in some kind of common interest. And I think Pan-Africanism and African nationalism coming together in a collective way and transcending all borders, religions, and politics is the only salvation for the whole of the African world. And yet, instead of moving toward that central ideology that could have saved us, we retreated from it at the most critical time in our history, when our enemies understood that if they could fragment us based on Africa, Caribbeans, and Black America, that they can extend their longevity as the dominant force in the world, economically especially, much longer. And that with all of our collection of intellects and thinkers and book writers, very few of them saw that. The Caribbeans were in a Caribbean bag, the African was in an African bag, the Black American was in a Black American bag. When all of their enemies were the same, and all of them needed to be at one political and cultural and economic bag. If your oppressor uses a word in reference to you that connects you with nation, he gives you respect. And to deprive you of that respect, he uses the word that has nothing to do with nation. The word Negro has nothing to do with nation. The word native has nothing to do with nation. And he will not call, most of the time, we won't call a Nigerian a Nigerian. I mean, this broadside looking at African people. But when we began our institutions in the United States, our first church was the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Our first lodges had African named the 12 African gentlemen. First comedians called the Ethiopian clowns or the Nubian rascals. We wasn't afraid of the word Africa. See, then with the colonization society, we began to make a distinction between Africans who lived in Africa and Africans who lived in the United States. And therefore, near the end of the century, we started using the word colored. But what we forget is that the name of a people, any people, must relate to land, history, and culture. And any time you address any people on the face of the earth by their proper name, if that name fails to relate to land, history, and culture, you have called them out of their name. Richard Moore, in his work called The Name Negro, Its Origin and Evil Use, has said, slaves and dogs are named by their masters. Free men name themselves. There used to be a people in Asia called Siamese. They decided they wasn't Siamese, they were Thai-speaking people, and their country was called Thai. It should be called Thailand. And they sent a message to the post offices of the world, the nations of the world, that if you address any mail to this country with the word Siam on it, we will throw it into the sea. And if you come here and address any of our citizens as Siamese, we will put you in jail for defamation of character. That was the end of Siam. And we have to take the same kind of drastic action if we're going to make change. We have to make some symbolic changes too in order to create a whole new economy. And the head of an African state should pray to an African God in public, unashamedly and unapologetically. And you reconsider that every people have a right to choose gods that look like them instead of gods that are assigned to them. Also, you should have a head of state say that I will not ride in a Mercedes-Benz until my people make a Mercedes-Benz. I'll eat only the clothes, wear only the clothes my people make. I'll eat only the food my people grow. You could revolutionize the economy. We are a nation within a nation. We must take on the characteristics of a nation and be self-serving. That doesn't mean we have detached ourselves from the rest of the nation. The Italians in America function as a nation. The Jews in America function as a nation. Yet they do not function less as a part of the United States because they also function as a nation. No single career opens a grocery store. He joins a Korean groceryman's association, and the association sustains him and protects him. It's not an individual store opened by an individual, while it is a store opened by an individual family. He's got a protection of 10 or 20 other families or stores. Therefore, he can buy en masse. Therefore, he can get insurance en masse. We can do the same thing and do it even better because we have some access to certain things that he hasn't got. We've been here longer. We just have to make the best use of it. I think what we have in the Koreans and a whole lot of the Asians, and unfortunately, sometimes Caribbean people, the new buffers. This nation looks for a buffer to stop the wave of anger of the American black. There was a time in New York City when the Irish were less favored than the blacks. And for a brief period, we became a kind of a buffer. Then the Irish got accepted in the white club, created a sloppy political machine called Tammany Hall. And the pressure they were putting on us, no longer Africa, I mean, we were small stuff, and they had to be banging on us. I mean, now they could, petty gangsterism controlled the union, certain unions. The subway union used to be basically Irish control. The police used to be basically Irish control. With all these things and Tammany Hall giving them large amount of political control, they could remove themselves from the lowly status. This is dangerous and delicate. The Jewish people we're talking about, let's get this established first. We're talking about a bunch of Europeans of the Hebrew faith. We're not talking about the descendants of Jacob and Isaiah and Abraham. We're not talking about the people of the book, black people who don't know how to read the Bible or history, unfortunately. I think they're talking about the same people. These are King Solomon's people. The European Jews had nothing to do with King Solomon and all the people, the biblical people. That's a separate and distinct people. We're talking about a bunch of Europeans of the Hebrew faith who were discriminated against in Europe. The Europeans drove them out of certain professions, and they had to take up certain professions that the Europeans frowned on. Money handling, money lending, fabric handling. They become so good at these professions, the same Europeans who discriminated against them for being in the profession had to come to them. And they're good at something, sometimes not because they're Jews, but because they've been in it longer. A bank is a listening post, and a great one. When you have to make a person, the fabric goes in a man's clothes, you can learn something about the character of the man who's going to wear the clothes. So they become good in the mind sciences, the ologies. We have to start producing things, and we should start, as I've often said, with our basic underwear and work on up. So I wear no clothes that my people don't produce. And we can employ 1/3 of our people at once, furnishing goods and services to each other. I don't believe in fraternities and sororities in the general sense, because the Greeks had no fraternities and sororities until they came in touch with Africa's secret societies. And inasmuch as what you think is a Greek fraternity is based on African secret societies, why take the Greek carbon copy? Let's go back to the African original. Keep the fraternity, but go back. Take the concept back to the African original when these societies were committed. There were societies of Masons who trained other Masons. And maybe the beginning of the father-son union. Society of stonecutters, society of craftsmen. And these men would pass on the secret of that craft to selected other members of the craft in order to preserve it. And in this way, you had the craftsmanship to maintain a nation. I think the African basis of fraternities and sororities laid the basis for the culture of independent African states long before the first European wore a shoe or lived in a house that had a window. And we need to look back in order to look forward. This is the best possible time for African people, because their detractors and enemies are having problems within themselves. This is the time for African people to solve the internal squabbles and stop breaking ourselves up into little groups based on where the slave ships put us down instead of where the slave ships took us from. This is a time for the whole African world to come together and begin to support itself, and we need to take Pan-Africanism beyond its narrow base and to a concept of an African world union. And I think that into this should go our religions, our social organizations, and our educational institutions. And this concept should stretch across all these various religious, political, and cultural, and geographic lines. And we need to be more for something than against something. And if we're going to be a people of tomorrow, then we have to be confident enough today to realize that if we're not a major part of it, then that tomorrow that we're referring to is not going to be.